Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small.
Rothrock going to collect it. He does just about. Runs into the advertising awning. Low to our left. Ball goes in. Oh, what a cross! And what a goal!
Where's my copy?
I got a bunch of them in the car. I'll get you some.
You're handing them out for free already.
How many
cost on them?
$50.
I'll Venmo you.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder Art Podcast Network. I am Jeremiah O'Shan. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Aaron Campo, and our producer, Lickett. We're going to be doing our mailbag episode for, I don't know, we'll call it March, I guess. I don't know. We're just doing these mailbags every now and then. How are you doing, Aaron?
Pretty good. I think I may have picked up a little bit of a cold traveling, but that's the, pays your money, you takes your chances, and not too bad. So yeah, first day back to work. So that kind of sucks, but living life. How about you?
Just living the dream.
Yeah.
Living the dream. But you were in, we might as well start there. You were in Minnesota.
I was,
in Minnesota for the game at Allianz Field.
Yep. Yeah.
And you saw the amazing 0-0 draw with the Sounders and Minnesota United. But you were, more importantly, you were there with a bunch of Sounder at Heart people.
I was there with Mark and Tim and Colton, who was not a Sounder at Heart person, but a great guy, honorary
person that the Sounder at Heart people probably know.
Adjacent, yeah. And then some other folks that a lot of folks from that area who are Sounders fans, and one guy who's a Loons fan, but a good guy. And yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. It was cold. It was unbelievably cold. When I got there on Saturday, it was like 75. Beautiful, sunny. Everybody was drunk out of their minds, walking around because it was the first nice day of the year. Next morning, I woke up. I had to walk up to get some groceries, and saw these people doing the walk of shame home in like summer clothes, and it was like 30 degrees out. It was pretty funny. Yeah, it was, I packed according to the forecast, which said it was supposed to be about 35, 40 degrees, and it was, but I tell you, 35, 40 degrees there is different than 35, 40 degrees here. It was cold. I was real cold in the stadium, but it was a good time. Yeah, I encourage anybody who's in the, whoever, if you're in the area or, you've always wanted to make the away trip, it's a fun one. Allianz is a cool stadium. I noticed some parallels with the area it's in with some areas that I've thought about the stadium potentially going in. The stretch that's on kind of reminds me a little bit of Rainier, around where the Lowe's is, which has been a sort of my hobby horse for going on a decade now. Yeah. Really cool soccer bar across the street called Black Heart of St. Paul has a big Megan Rapinoe mural on the outside.
West Burdine's bar, there. Right?
I believe that's correct. Yeah. Very cool bar. Everyone's very friendly. Nobody even pretended to, hassle me, which was nice. And yeah, it was a fun day. Good stadium food. And I mean, I'm a little jealous of their situation. They've got their own stadium. It feels very much like it belongs to the Loons, because it literally does. But it's just it's a contrast to the experience at Lumen, where you're pretty aware that you're there to watch a tenant play. It's small. I think it's a little under 20,000 capacity, so that wouldn't work for the Sounders most likely, but still,
don't give Adrian any too many ideas.
Honestly, if he puts a 20,000 seat stadium that's sort of like a more modern version of Allianz in the city, I'd rather have that than a 30,000 foot stadium.
Fair enough.
Like and the stadium is in St. Paul, so it's not like it's in downtown Minneapolis, but it was my hotel room was right in the middle of downtown Minneapolis, and from leaving my hotel to walking in the door at the Blackheart, it was 25 minutes or so. So not terrible. So but it was fun. The game sucked. That was the least. That was by far the worst part of the trip was the actual game. I thought the Sounders played well, did what they needed to do to get a result. They don't like Andrew Thomas.
They don't. They don't like. He got a lot of boos, but
he did. Yeah.
And I don't want to excuse the treatment that our boy got, but it wasn't totally out of the blue. I guess there was some back and forth between Andy and the Loons fans at the last shootout. So, and he seemed to take it in stride as well.
I got no problems with it at all. It was kind of, I think I was confused more than anything, but once I got the explanation, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That tracks. Hey, it's all fun. Nobody seemed to be out of bounds. There was a guy in Blue Sky who said he looked like a white nationalist, which I thought was insane.
Because this seemed like a little unnecessary, but
I had that haircut for a long time, so I kind of took that implication personally a little bit.
Yeah.
But in any route, I didn't have any problems with it. And I thought it made for a fun environment. So yeah, it's good to be home, but Minneapolis is cool. Honestly, I was prepared for any kind of ribbing that I was going to get going into ostensibly a Minnesota United bar. What those people have been through the last 6 months or so, they could have spit on me and I would have been fine with it. But everybody was, true to form, was very nice, and cool city. Recommend you go. They've got, the food is insane in that town, and I don't mean that in a like it's the best food in the world. I mean it's literally insane. They've got hamburgers with cheese in the middle of them. It's pretty crazy stuff. But I had a banana this morning, so I'm back on track.
There you go.
Back to eating fiber.
There you go. Well,
yeah.
Did you have any sort of insight into the game? Did you have any takeaways from that at all?
Nah, I mean, I think that the Sounders did what they needed to do. I think on a different day they might have scored. They created some chances. They looked pretty lively to start the game. They were attacking the end. We were in it, in the first half, and that always, I think, feels like there's more danger being created than maybe there actually is. But it felt like they had some good chances. I think that defensively, it is what it is, right? They had a game midweek. They've been on the road since February. I made the note to myself when Jordan came on that Jordan's been out for over a month and he's not going to miss any home games. It's like, I think that it's easy to forget because they've played so well on this road swing that they've been on the road since February. And that's got to take a toll on you. They did have the game in Spokane, obviously. But it's still a midweek game and it's still not in Seattle. You've got to travel at least a little bit. So that's going to be, take a little bit of a toll on you. I don't want to say that I thought they played well necessarily, but I think especially losing Alex in the first half. And then Minnesota, after Hamas came on, Minnesota looked pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, I did too.
And I thought the decision, like, all right, let's pack it in and just get out of here with a point was the right one. So not a super exciting game. Not one I'm going to remember much about, in the not so distant future, but, a point's a point, on the road trip. So far, they've got 7, I think, from,
yeah,
potential 12,
that's how
right?
Yeah, honestly, my main takeaway from this is, look, you're at 7 points, 4 games through this road trip with there's every reason to think they can get something out of Houston.
Yeah.
Like, they shouldn't be going into Houston expecting to do anything but win. Like, they can win that game, and
Right.
so if they win, to come out of this road trip with 10 points
Right.
would be way beyond. I mean, we were not talking about a 10-point road trip at the start of this at all. If they get 8 points, I think that would be fantastic. If they lose this game, I still think this is a pretty successful road trip. So I don't know that you can really complain about where they are right now. Now, could they have gotten more out of the Minnesota game? Sure. They also could have gotten less out of the San Jose game, I think, you kind of almost take, it's like, if you can swap those two results, I think, you might want to do that. But, this is all things considered, not a bad result. I wasn't enamored with how they played, but I also wasn't super discouraged. I thought the lineup choices were sound. I think, Georgie didn't necessarily have a great game, but this is the exact kind of defense you want to play Georgie against. Yeah. I thought Petkovic looked pretty good. I don't really have, I don't have an issue. Andrew Thomas has 4 shutouts in 5 games.
Yeah. Giving up 2 goals and 4 on the road. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider how good they've looked defensively, missing as many defenders as they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a team who has not had, I don't think they've had 2. Hell, well, when did Yamar go out? Yamar went out in the RSL game?
Yeah. It was the RSL game. Yep.
So he's basically missed the entire road trip.
Yeah.
They've given up 3 goals
right. Let me double check that.
3 goals in 7 games.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the offense isn't exactly humming, but the offense wasn't humming at this point last year either.
Right. And when they've played at home, it's looked pretty good. Right.
Right. You average a goal a game away from home. You don't love it, but if you're giving up a half a goal a game, you'll take it, Yeah.
Yeah. Yamar got hurt against St. Louis City, but he got hurt very early.
All right.
So,
well,
and he got pulled against RSL too. So
that's right.
But still, he played 20 minutes in that game.
Yeah.
It's not like it really changes the equation that much.
I agree. All right. Well, we got a bunch of questions. And as a reminder, all these questions come to us from our Discord. And if you want to get in on the Discord, all you got to do is become a member at the supporter level of above. That's a $75 a year level. And then request a invite. That's a step that a fair number of people miss. I don't blame them, but you do have to request an invite. There is not an automatic process for getting into the thing. Just email us at support@sounderatheart.com and we'll confirm that you're an appropriate level member and we'll get you signed up. And you get to have a lot of fun. Like I've said, the game threads are a lot of fun. You get a lot of access to the Sounder at Heart staff. And we have little beta tests that we run. Like people got a little early access to the stand. Like if you didn't notice, we just unveiled a standings app and a stat app, which I think are pretty cool. And we're looking for new things to do, so you can participate in all that. But anyway, let's jump into these questions, Aaron.
Let's do it. The first one is from, I feel like we start off a lot of mailbags with
Bill Jones.
Questions from Bill Jones.
I think he's another one. Been in almost every single mailbag we've done.
That's probably true. And he has a way of asking questions that set the right tone.
Yes.
There's a thing in pro wrestling called a curtain jerker, right? Oh. Where it's a guy that you can always put on first. I almost said it, but I didn't. I said the right thing. But they always put on, they're going to put on a good match and set the right energy, right? And I feel like Bill brings that kind of energy.
Ricky Steamboat or
yeah,
Coco Beware type is what you're saying.
Yeah, Macho Man was a guy that went on early a lot, because you knew he was gonna. If he's not in the main event scene right at that time, he's still a big name. Everybody's excited to see. That's Bill. From now on, anytime we see a name on the Sounders bench that we don't recognize, we just assume that they're doing pretty dang good, right?
I mean, at this point, right? I mean, Peter Kingston. This is obviously a commentary on Tina Lopez and Peter Kingston, I think. Although you could say it about Pekovic or a few different people, but Peter Kingston in his first start, or not his first start, but he was good in his first start against San Jose, but then coming off the bench and providing 2 assists without being on a contract is maybe the most impressive performance that we've seen from an unsigned player in Sounders history. I mean, that was, pretty impressive. I realized Paul Rothrock scored while unsigned, but like
I was going to say Rothrock was probably the previous high, but this has got to be the new one. I think. Yeah, he's looked great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a guy that doesn't watch a ton of Defiance, like it's always a little bit of a treat to finally see these guys I've heard a lot about, and him and Tino have certainly impressed.
Yeah. Tino Lopez has been I have to say, even as someone who watched a fair amount of Tino Lopez and Peter Kingston, I was not totally prepared for the performances that they put together, because they were both very good and very impressive. Tino Lopez looks like a veteran already. It's been in some ways even more impressive than Kingston, because he just looks so comfortable. Whereas Kingston has had a couple moments where you're like, okay, see why he hasn't been signed yet, but I do think Kingston's going to be good.
Sometimes you really can't tell what these guys are going to look like until they're actually playing at the level,
right.
Things that you don't value high enough at the lower level end up being more important at the higher level, and things that maybe seem like they're going to be a problem at the higher level maybe aren't, and vice versa sometimes, right? Like guys will look great with Defiance and maybe can't make the jump. So
absolutely. And I think two good examples of that are Kalani Kosarienzi and Snyder Brunel, neither of whom put up really particularly gaudy numbers at Defiance, but they seem even better with Sounders than they did at Defiance.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. This next one is from the Joshua. I heard of players quitting their coaches. What does that mean, and what does that actually look like?
In terms of what it means, it just means, I think, that for a tactical plan to work, there has to be buy-in from everybody, right? They have to think it's the right thing to do, or at least trust the coach enough to put aside their doubts and commit to the idea. And they have to be willing to give, a lot of themselves, right? Like, I think if you're motivated, if you feel good about your coach and that they're asking you to do certain things for the right reasons, and that if you can succeed, that you're going to be successful, that you're going to be treated fairly, that you're going to achieve your goals. It's probably easier to give a little extra effort, I mean, I think with any job, right? If you feel like the work you're being asked to do is getting you to the place you need to get to, it's easier to do the work. It's easier to put in the longer hours, the longer days to commit whatever it is, right? If you think your boss is an idiot and you don't think that the work is going to help you get ahead and achieve your career goals, you're not going to put in as much effort. It's going to be, it's going to be tough. In terms of how it looks, go find the Sounders at Sporting KC from July 24th, 2016. And that is a team that had quit on their coach.
Yeah. That's probably the best example of a maybe the only example really of a Sounders team that just kind of looked like they were done.
It was so obvious because we'd had times before where it felt like Ziggy might be on the hot seat and things got turned around, and it was so obvious that something was different in that game. I think everybody just really felt it.
And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that the the delta between, the margins in MLS are so thin, and when you just don't have a team that's fully committed to a coach, I do think that's where you oftentimes get these differences, because it's like the quality of players from one roster to the next is not that great. And I do think that's sort of the secret power, the secret sauce of the Sounders, is that they have really sold players on this idea that we need all 30 players on the roster. And when it's your number that gets called, the expectation is that you perform at a certain level. And the thing is, all these players are pretty skilled. Like, they all fall within a pretty tight range of skill. And a lot of it is just sort of having the right mindset and believing that you're going to get that ball, that you can make that touch, that you can, finish this chance. And that's ultimately what differentiates a team that is, trying to make its 17th postseason in 18 seasons, and one that, misses every, 2 or 3 years. But
yeah. All right. Next one is from Dryside Paul. If he keeps his current run of form, how likely is it that the Sounders pick up Petkovic's contract at the end of the year?
That's a good question, and I've been wondering that myself. I don't know exactly what his purchase option is at. If it's $1 million, that's probably still a little steep if he's just doing sort of what he's doing now, which is promising but not necessarily amazing. But I think the Sounders might try to do something like decline his option, decline their purchase option, and then see if they can get him on a lower number. Now, if he starts balling out, that might not be they might actually have to pick up that option. But so I guess my answer would be, on the current trajectory, I don't know that he'll be picked up, assuming it's $1 million option. Now, if it's a $500,000 option, maybe that changes, but it is cash. So, it might just come down to whether or not the Sounders are willing to spend on it. And he is a U22 next season, because he's got one more year left on his contract. Yeah. So there's some value still to be had there. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think right now, I think it's at best a 50-50 option.
Yeah. I think, the only thing I agree pretty much entirely. The thing that I would say is that there's a trajectory I can see him hitting.
Yes.
Where he makes it a no-brainer, right? Like,
I agree.
I think that the potential is clearly there. I think the difference is going to be, does he reach that potential, or do we see maybe why Dean Smith stopped giving him minutes? It's that he just can't get to that next level. So,
I mean, that said, I think he may already be on more minutes than he had last year.
Possible, yeah. I'm really, I feel like I've talked about it on here before, but I'm really perplexed because he just seems like such a Dean Smith player to me.
It's very strange that he has had such a hard time getting on the field last year, especially because he has obvious, positive attributes. Yeah, so he's already played more minutes than he did last year. That's crazy. He only played 97 minutes in MLS last year. That is wild. That's pretty crazy.
Was he hurt for a chunk of last year? I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't think he was, but
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
I don't know. I definitely think he is a better player than he. I think the Sounders made a very clever acquisition. I'll just put it that way. Regardless of where this goes, I think it was a good move.
Yep. Agree.
This is from KW226 2026. What are the key distinctions you're seeing between Brunel and Petkovic, and how likely is it one of them could displace Dotson for the regular starter's role prior to the World Cup break?
I could definitely see Brunel doing it.
It may have happened.
Man.
It may have happened. It could have already happened. Like, frankly,
I think that's entirely possible. He's been great. He's done whatever they've asked him to do. He's been really good. The upside is tremendous. I don't think the Sounders are people that get tripped up on the sunk cost fallacy very often. You know, it would be rough having a guy on a TAM salary behind a recent academy graduate, but if he's
No, I
if
don't.
he's
Yeah, I
earned the
don't think
minutes,
that's.
you know,
I and
I don't think it's going to
we
be consideration.
and we've said it before, but I do think it's worth it. Bears repeating. If Brunell gets this job, I think it has more to do with what Brunell has shown and less to do with what Hassani has not shown.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do think, Hassani's going to get his minutes, but and I suppose if it was a must-win game on the, and I don't know, Dotson might start on the road. It's a road game. There's reasons that you would potentially give him the start, even if, but I do think the gap has closed a lot. Brunell has shown a lot of upside. I do think he's still inconsistent. He's still prone to making some mistakes. Even some of his flary sort of like aha moments don't always come off. And that's,
right.
That's a notable thing, but there's a lot to like. I like Snyder Brunell a lot.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. I think that he has, I wasn't really sure what to think of him coming into this year. I liked his potential. I know people in the organization are very high on him, so I was excited about him, but I did not think he was going to be at this level. It's been really impressive. And I think the main distinction between him and Pekovic is that I think Snyder can play plausibly as a 6. He's not great at it, but I think he can play there. He's an 8. He can play box to box. He can play on the wing. Pekovic, I think, is a Danny Leva-ish 8, but really more of a 10, right? Like he's not. You can start him in midfield, and it's not like you're going to get run over, but he doesn't have the defensive chops. He's a much more creative player.
He's going to hit a better
planned round.
He's more likely to hit a good switch or a through ball.
He's had some good set pieces.
Yeah. Sure. Whereas I think Brunell is probably more likely to get into a tackle, dribble past a guy, score a goal. He's a little more dynamic of a player.
He reminds me a lot more of Christian, right? And Pekovic reminds me a lot more of Rusnak.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
All right, next one is from Jacob W. Looks like Yu Tsukunome has rarely made the bench for the Sounders this year and played 3 90s with Defiance. What are his chances of making an appearance for the Sounders in 2026?
In all of 2026, I think there's a decent chance, but if I had to pick one field player who is least likely to play for the Sounders, it might be Tsukunome. And that would be rough. I really like Tsukunome. I think he is a talented player, but if you're looking for reasons why he hasn't gotten on the field, I think it's mainly that the Sounders haven't been in a position where they, I think he's much more likely to play at home. I think he's going to have to prove him. I think he has a little bit more to prove in terms of what Brian wants to see. He is he's a little bit more of a luxury player. Like he is he's not going to defend a ton. He's someone who doesn't have a totally clear. He's not really a 9. He's not really a winger. He's not really a 10. I mean, he's sort of like a Freddie Montero withdrawn. Like his best position is probably like a Dempsey type of, player. And there's just not a lot of those guys in the game today. He is a lot of fun to watch. I like his game. It's fun, but I'm not totally surprised that he hasn't gotten on the field yet. And I think he's, the reality is that he's behind a lot of other offensive players who give you a little bit more two-way play. So I don't know the exact, it would, for him to get on the field, it probably means there's a few injuries or a few players are unavailable and it's a home game.
Yeah. I think you nailed it with luxury player, right? And it's tough enough to be a luxury player, period. I think it's really tough to be a luxury player at the back end of the roster. And I think that
Yeah.
Just because you earned a contract, because you earned a first team deal, it doesn't mean that you've earned minutes, right?
No.
You've got to make the coach play you. You've got a lot to prove, I think, if you're in a situation like that. And the Sounders have signed a lot of guys from the Defiance that just haven't hit, and that's okay. Like, I think it's fine to say you played really well at the Defiance. You've done everything
Travion
we've asked
Sousa
you
last
to.
year.
Yeah, they get a little bit of a little bit of financial help for a couple of years, get a bigger contract than they would have had playing in MLS Next Pro, and then hopefully they can go on and play in USL. Maybe someday they can work their way back to MLS, but it's hard. Like, being at the back end of the roster is really hard, and it's a pretty cutthroat business. It's very tough to make it, and as a professional soccer player, and I think when you have that kind of skill set, you really have to separate yourself from other people to force your way into a lot of minutes.
Yeah. And that's just, that's pro soccer, baby.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately, and I do hope I would love it if he gets into it, because he has a great story. I actually talked to his coach for the South Dakota team that he played for. I want to say, I actually had to look this up, but it's like, he has a great story. I talked to his agent a few times. I do think he could be a decent player if he got a run out, but I also can't really look you in the eye and say he deserves to be playing over Georgie Manungu or Paul Areola. I'm trying to, right. Certainly Jesus Ferreira, Albert Rusnak. He's just not going to play over those guys.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Look Forward. Since this is an international break, Christian Roldan is said to have had some influence in getting Jesus and Paul to agree to come to joining trophy hunting Sounders. Which players on the U.S. national team should he be recruiting? Who would be your dream catch? Who might be the most likely? Ooh.
Oh, man, I really hate most of the U.S. national team. So I'm just being real.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind Brian White as a Sounder, maybe. He's a little
Brian White. Brian White isn't even on the roster right now.
I know, but he's played for the U.S.
Okay.
Cade Cowell. I would have liked Cade Cowell at a certain point. Let's see.
I'll tell you right off the top of my dome, of the guys who are there right now, Weston McKennie feels like the perfect. Like, that's a Brian Schmetzer player.
Yeah, I do like Weston McKennie pretty well.
And he's obviously, he's born in he's a local boy, technically. Well, I don't know how much time he spent here, but he was
very
born
little, I believe. Yeah.
Huh?
Very little, I believe.
I think he moved before he was conscious. But
yeah,
if I'm just get to pick anyone off the roster, Florian Balogun, there's definitely guys on the team who I would.
Sebastian Berhalter. I know he hasn't gotten a lot of call ups.
Yeah, I could take a Sebastian Berhalter.
I like him. He's a good player.
A Chris Richards.
Yeah. There are a lot of good players on the U.S. national team that would obviously be great in MLS. Ricardo Pepi, right, would be a dream.
Christian, Christian Pulisic. I'm not gonna.
Yeah. No. I couldn't look past the unpleasantness with him. But,
fair enough.
He's a great player, obviously, but he sucks as a guy.
He does seem to kind of suck.
Yeah, but I think that plausibly the guys that Christian could, be a tiebreaker for, right, could talk up the Sounders, are going to be guys like, I don't know, Diego Luna or something, right?
Right, yeah.
They're not going to be the big stars, probably.
Max Arston.
Yeah, but those guys are those guys are good. Those guys are difference makers in MLS, so that's not necessarily a problem.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anyone on the team who I think is like a realistic target and someone who I think is a genuine upgrade.
Yeah.
But Like I'm going to say McKinney is the guy that I would.
If Wesley McKinney wants to come back to
pick one.
MLS and wants it as a DP in like a year or two,
yeah,
I would be ecstatic if the Sounders, assuming he doesn't like fall off a cliff. But I mean, Juventus wanted done with him.
He's
as recently as like 2 years ago, and now he's like
I think every year they say that.
Right. So
and then he works his way back into good graces.
Yeah. So yeah, good player. The kind of midfielder that I really love having on the team. A super Christian, as it were. So
yeah.
So yeah, let's start banging the drum. All right. This one's from T Stubbs. After the second leg in Spokane, I thought Kingston would have done enough to earn a first team contract. What are the factors that go into the decision not to sign him yet?
That's a good question. I think it is probably, it does feel, honestly, it feels a bit like they are just sort of delaying the inevitable, because I think if he's not out of options, he might only have one left, but you're likely to give it to him. And so I don't know, I guess that maybe they kind of want to see what else could happen, I guess, but it feels a little bit like they're just sort of like dragging their feet. I don't think there's any, they don't have, I will say this, they don't have a lot of roster flexibility right now. That's, the cold hard fact is that if he signs, I think they're effectively out of roster spots. And so they would, in order to sign another player, they would have to move someone out. Now they could designate someone for, a loan to Defiance, or there's ways that they could open it up, but it does sort of lock in the roster. And I suppose there's an argument that they might not really need him again once everyone gets healthy. And so at that point, you sort of tied your hands just to be like, do right by Kingston. And I don't know if that's really how we expect the Sounders to behave, but I guess that would be the reason, is that they just want to keep the roster flexibility. Yeah,
which is pragmatic, right? But like you said, it's not really the way the Sounders operate generally. I think like you get the opportunity and you go out there and you get 2 assists in the Champions League and you do everything that's asked of you. You go into a really difficult game in San Jose and you help the team win. Like it's would be uncharacteristic, I think, of the Sounders to not reward him with the deal, and unless they can trade him somewhere where he, can get a first team deal. Maybe that's an option. I don't know, but they'd have to sign him first. So.
Sounder at Heart has been around in one form or another since 2009. In 2026, though, we make a pretty significant evolution when we go analog. Yes, that's right. In the year of our Lord 2026, we are publishing a real-life magazine. We're calling this thing 4, as in Sounder at Heart 4.0, but we're stylizing it as IV because we absolutely love Roman numeral. And if you want to refer to it as IV, that's cool too. The first issue has a comic book style cover that was hand-drawn by local artist Kevin Newber. Features by Tim Foss, Susie Rance, and Charlie Boehm, a statistical deep dive by Kat Bush, a Q&A with Brian Schmetzer, a column by G. Willow Wilson, and photographs by Noah Reif, Max Aquino, Mike Russell, and Jane Dershowitz. I could not possibly be more proud of the work everyone put into making this, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these limited edition copies, we're currently selling them for $15 on our website. Get yours now. Nos Odietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, Go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. Yeah. All right. This is from Veritatum7. Veritatum7.
That's how I'd go with it.
Okay. In these 7 games, how would you characterize the Sounders' playing style this season? I've heard some out there call it a harem ball, Ramsey ball in terms of their defensive play, but at times it also looks very similar to last year's team in their transition and passing. Thoughts?
I've actually thought the way the Sounders, so the San Jose game is an outlier here, as it is to some degree the second leg against Vancouver. The San Jose game was we're just going to try to get a result however we can. Second leg against Vancouver was let's not do anything stupid and let them back into this tie. Both good results, both, I think both the right decision. But in terms of the way they've approached games generally, I think the one key piece of information is that they have been on the road for all but one game, right? So that's a big part of it. And that's going to skew perceptions because teams just play more defensively on the road. It's just the way it goes. But when that's 90% of your sample size, it's going to, change perceptions. But I think that there have been elements of last year's style of play, but I think they have been much more direct this year, especially when Dero has been on the field. They have used him as a target forward. They have tried to start, there's been like a little bit more kick and rush type stuff. And that sort of matches ongoing trends in world football, right? Like that style of play has come back in a big way, and the Sounders are starting to integrate it. But I think that they are still a pressing team. They like to get out in transition. They like to push the line of confrontation high, I think, when the game state is in their favor. And I think once they're back to playing home games more regularly, I think they are going to look a lot more like they did last season, but maybe a little more direct, maybe a little bit less patient build up and a little bit more aggressive counter pressing type stuff. And yeah, because I think Jordan is not the target forward that Dero is. He's just not as big, right? That's part of it. But he's a very competent target forward. But he's also kind of the guy you want playing off of the target forward, and getting in behind. Right. So it'll be interesting to see once he's back because sometimes it's like when you've got a guy like Dero, like when you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Like punt it up to the big dude and let's see what can happen. If he's not in there, maybe that just sort of impacts the way they play as well. So, but yeah, in general, I have not seen any Ramsey ball. I think that's crazy. I'm not sure who would have suggested that. It's impossible to really quantify how negative those Minnesota teams were.
I mean, I think I think you sort of just are. I think in that case, people are just sort of looking at the possession numbers, and that's sort of the extent of the analysis. But I can understand people. There is some frustration, I think, with the way the Sounders have been playing, where they haven't been controlling games. I mean, they've not been. But I just think like you said, you just sort of have to divorce that from, you can't divorce it from so many of these games have been on the road. They're not playing, they're on short rest and on the road. They're in the middle of playing 8 straight games away from Lumen Field. That's, there is a pragmatism that they are practicing, and they are getting results. So it's hard to really argue with anything they're doing. If this is how things looked and they were 4 games, they played 4 home games, I would feel differently. But I'm fine playing this way on the road, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they've got 10 points. 1, 4, 6. It was April 12th before they had 10 points last year, right? So, and they played a decent number of home games in that run. So, yeah, I'm totally fine with it. But yeah, like you said, if they're playing this way at home, that's maybe not as great. Yeah. This one's from Mendy. What does the future look like at center back this season and possibly beyond? Do we ever see Hawkins, Keehee, and Saylor in a match? I'm assuming that's not all three of them at once. I'm assuming that's generally. Is it too early to call if Yamar returns after this season?
Definitely too early to say whether Yamar returns after the season. Although I think this may help increase. My understanding is he wasn't necessarily looking for a huge raise anyway, and I do think this is sort of like maybe killed his trade value.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a pretty good chance that Yamar is back on sort of a relatively team friendly deal. I 100% think that we will see Kim and Hawkins play this year. I don't know about Saylor. I have heard conflicting information about his injury. Some people tell me that it's serious enough that he might never play, and some people tell me that he might be back in a month. So I don't know what to believe about Ryan Saylor. And even there's a world where Ryan Saylor doesn't get on the field, even if he does get healthy, because he might be the fifth center back on the depth chart. So, that's also possible. But I think right now the depth chart is probably, it's hard to project the depth chart when everyone's healthy. But I do think it's possible that Alex Roldan is the third center back.
Yeah.
Like all things being equal. And then behind him, it might be Tino Lopez right now. Like I don't know that either Keehee or Hawkins will just sort of slide back in and jump Tino Lopez without some evidence that they deserve to. I mean, Tino Lopez has now shown that he can do this job. I think that's going to go a long way with Brian. I do hope, of all those players, though, my hope is that Stuart Hawkins gets a decent run, because I do really like his upside. I think he's a potentially elite center back.
Yeah, and he's at the point where he needs to be playing somewhere pretty regularly.
Absolutely.
Other than the
I
don't think he needs to be playing in Defiance. Yeah.
No, he needs real minutes for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. This is from T Stubbs. Has Nouhou's game matured? He's still doing a lot of the good Nouhou things, with much less of the bad.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately as well. I think he's been genuinely good this year. And I wonder if that is a change in his approach, or if it's that the way the Sounders have been playing on the road a lot. And so the overall approach is more conservative. So he's just, as a virtue of the way things are going in the games, he's not getting forward as much. But I do think his decision making has been a little better. I think he's picked his spots a little better. I have not seen as many sort of like hero ball type minutes where he tries to dribble out of things he shouldn't dribble out of. I think he's been really, really good. Matured is always a trick. The word I don't love throwing around, but there definitely, I feel like, has been a little more pragmatism to his game, where he's leaning into his strengths and maybe is a little more self-aware of his weaknesses. So I've been impressed. I've been down on Nouhou for a while, but I mean that was based on what I was seeing, and so far this year I've liked what I've seen. So if he keeps it up, I'm happy for him to keep that spot locked down.
I'll say that I think there is an element of him playing within himself and being sort of locked in more than I'd seen in the past.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no complaints about how he's played this year. I've never really been a anti-Nouhou person, but I think the Sounders right now are using him as effectively as they've ever used him. I think he's made a lot of plays. I was just thinking about the San Jose game and how he made several plays that just sort of made everything easier than it would have been otherwise. And he's been great. I have absolutely no complaints about him right now.
This one's from Josh. The team has added long throws into their repertoire this year, with both Kalani and Paul flinging them in. How do you think it's going?
I think it's a good tool to have in your arsenal. I can't say I have totally clocked that, but I feel like that's true. Kalani seems like someone in particular who is probably well suited for it. You know, we might see him break out a cartwheel throw.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Why not?
actually going to happen. But you know, I don't see why teams wouldn't do it. Like, if you can throw a ball, if you can, like, it doesn't hurt you to throw a ball into the box, you know?
No, it's for me. It's like, as long as we're aware of how dangerous they actually are, they're less dangerous than corners, which are not especially
Right.
dangerous.
Right.
But there's no reason not, like, if you've got somebody that can get it there and create a little chaos, yeah, you'd be crazy not to do it.
And I, you know, part of what teams that really commit to it are doing, though, is they throw extra numbers forward. And I don't know that it's really worth doing that for, but.
Right. This isn't, we don't have Rory DeLapp over there, you know?
No.
Man, that is a really old reference. That's depressing. Yeah. But yeah, I like them. They're fun to watch. I got no problems with them.
Yeah. All right, this is from W. Is there a world where if Albert doesn't turn it on during the home stretch and the wingers get healthy, that Jesus will shift centrally?
I mean, yeah, if Albert's not playing well, sure. I just don't think that's especially likely. I mean, there's a world where Jordan forgets how to score and Danny Musovski becomes the starting striker. There's a world where Jackson Reagan, forgets how to defend and Stu Hawkins takes his place. Like, it's possible.
I'm not of the likely outcomes. I don't think I see Albert losing his job to Jesus as super likely, only because there's been a fair amount of consternation, I feel like, over Albert's start. He's got a goal and an assist through 7 games.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's not that bad either. Like,
Albert has that issue where if he's not totally dominating games, people want to replace him.
Right. And I don't know that I would be expecting Jesus to be putting up crazy number. I mean, I like Jesus this year. I have not seen Jesus be so good as the 10 that I'm dying to replace him.
No.
You know, like, I mean, he can do the
Jesus
job. Absolutely.
Yeah. He has assists and they've been, he's been good. He's played well. He has 2 shots.
Yeah.
He has 0.05 XG.
That's not that good. It's
That's
not that high.
good.
It's not that
It's
high.
not good. Like, you need more. You need more than that from your right midfielder, but you really need more than that from your 10, unless they are putting up insane creation numbers, and he's not.
No.
Next one's from Everett Sounder. How much do you think our lack of goal scoring has to do with our center back injury crisis, which seems to limit how well we can play out of the back?
You know, I think it's related. I think that okay, let me rewind a little bit. I don't think the center back crisis is the main culprit for the Sounders' offensive struggles. I think the Sounders' defensive posture in the road games is more about that. And maybe they have been less expansive because they don't have their, because Yamar has not been there as their sort of safety blanket, that maybe they've been less expansive. But I tend to think it's much more about road games and game state than it is about Yamar being out, essentially.
Yeah. Missing Jordan Morris, I think, has been a
missing
factor.
Jordan Morris is another.
Especially because the center back most effective at playing out of the back has been healthy, right? Like,
exactly.
That's Jackson Reagan's differentiating factor.
If Jackson Reagan had been out, that would be an easy one to identify as that's a probably a major reason. All right, this is from Rilo 2. What should Craig and company be looking for at the next move for the number 9? I love JMO, and hopefully he's got at least a couple seasons left, but we got to be a bit hesitant with injuries. Hopefully D-Row hits and Moose can stay in form, but these seem riskier bets this year. How soon and what kind of player should the team be looking at?
So I'm kind of two minds on this, because there's an emerging school of thought that unless you're one of the very elite teams in the world, striker is not really a place you should be that worried about, right? Like, just find somebody who's good enough, who can get into decent positions. Find your Danny Musovsky, right? Like, find somebody who can do the build up work and gets into good spots and scores and is maybe not crazy talented, because the market for strikers is so completely insane. It's just not a great use of resources. And the modern game is really more about everything that happens before the goal is scored, right? And I think there's a lot of merit to that, but MLS is such a different animal because of roster restrictions and stuff like that, like, it's kind of hard to find those guys that are good enough to be, prolific goal scorers in a team that's creating a ton of chances without commanding DP wages. And if you're paying a DP salary, you might as well go crazy and buy the best player you can. So, realistically, though, I don't think Danny Musovsky and Osaze De Rosario are good enough to build a team around, to for a championship team to say, yep, that's our guy. D-Row might get there. Danny Musovsky, I think, is a great second forward. I think that he is the kind of second forward that a team with championship aspirations should be very happy to have. And I think he can be a decent starting forward in MLS, but he's not a guy that I think any team with championship aspirations is going to say, that's our guy. We're happy with that, right? So, and Jordan, I mean, I'm less worried about the injuries than most people, but I understand, right? I get it. Like, he's had a lot of injuries the last couple of years, and he is, he's 30 is not old for a soccer player, but it's closer to being old than it is to being young. And, for a guy who has a lot of physical gifts, and that's been a lot of his game for a long time, his decline might come a little sooner. He might also play till he's 35 and be effective. Who knows, right? But I don't blame anybody for wanting them to do contingency planning. But I don't think they can go after like a Raul Ruidiaz type forward. I think that forward just isn't going to work in the modern MLS. I think they need a guy who's like big, athletic, somebody who looks like Osaze De Rosario, but has a little bit more of a killer instinct, cutting edge to their game. And yeah, where they find that guy, I mean, who knows, right? Like, because a lot of those guys that look like they would be sure things have come into MLS and not really had that much success. And so it's kind of a crapshoot. But I think it's something they always have to be looking at. But realistically, right now, they're just kind of stuck with who they've got, because Jordan Morris has a DP contract for another couple of years. Alvaro Snack is a DP for another couple of years. Pedro de la Vega is a DP for another couple of years. So they're kind of stuck where they are. But after, how do we know how long Musovsky's extension was for?
We do, and it was for. Oh wait, his contract is through the 27-28 season with a
so realistically, this
option.
Is probably the forward group for the next couple of years, right? Unless they move somebody. So, it's a long-term problem.
It is a long-term problem. I would say that if in the spirit of the question, though, I think you could do a lot worse than figuring out how to get Peter Musa from Dallas. He's 28. Yeah. He's pretty much the player that he does a lot of the same stuff that Jordan does, but he's a more prolific scorer. I don't know what that would cost you. It would probably be very expensive to bring in a Peter Musa over a Jordan Morris. He's probably I think they paid $10 million to sign him in the first place. I can't imagine his price has gone down, but that's the archetype I think that you're looking at, is someone who, has some physical attributes, is good around the box. That would be a great signing. But I don't have, admittedly, I don't have a list of players.
Right.
I suppose a Sam Surridge is another player from within MLS if you could go out and sign someone like that. But yeah, I don't know exactly what I think the problem, honestly, with replacing Morris is that it's really expensive if you're going to go out and upgrade over Jordan Morris. And that's part of why you are probably looking at buying a U22 and sort of future planning for it. And, I don't think they're in dire need of doing. I don't think they need to do anything soon, though. That's the good news.
Next one's from Pyro. With Defiance picking up yet another Ballard FC product with Joe Dale is one of the. With Joe Dale is one. Okay, sorry, I'm starting over. With Defiance picking up yet another Ballard FC product with Joe Dale is one of the underappreciated strengths in the Sounders pipeline, having what appears to be a decently solid USL2 ecosystem.
It definitely does not hurt. I think you could look at Peter Kingston as probably the best example of a player who very well could have left soccer if not for Ballard FC. There's a world where Peter Kingston just isn't playing soccer anymore, at least not professionally. And Ballard was sort of the bridge, no pun intended, to sort of get the Sounder, to get him to professional soccer. I don't know enough about Joe Dale to be able to say if he has a future, but having that extra step in the ecosystem definitely does not hurt. Now, how much fruit will that bear? I don't know. That's time will tell. Right now, there's quite a few players that are going from Ballard to Defiance. Not as many of those players are matriculating from Defiance to Sounders, but that Peter Kingston, that you have one, is pretty cool and a good sign and probably the best example of how that system can prolong and expand your pipeline.
Yep.
All right. This is from Dorcas. How would you schedule more trips to Spokane for the Sounders? CONCACAF Champions Cup, Open Cup, friendlies?
So we talked a little bit about this last week. Didn't go into a ton of detail. I think part of the problem is that there are restrictions on playing outside of your home stadium, right?
Especially in CONCACAF. Now, in Open Cup, there might be more. There might be more ability early in the tournament. So maybe I may have misstated that last time, but early round Open Cup games wouldn't be the worst idea.
Yeah. I mean, if they ever play in those again.
And I don't know how this would go over either. The reality is that if the Sounders were to do that, it would almost certainly be sort of like a reserve heavy lineup, and they would probably be more inclined to use a reserve heavy lineup. But, by the time this comes into play, Memorial may be available. So I do think it's worth doing a preseason game out there every year. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Like if they were to just play Spokane Velocity during, one of their preseason games every year, that would be great, I think.
Yeah, they could bring back the Charity Cup or what have you.
Yeah. The Community Shield.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's a great idea.
This is from Nate B. How likely is anything to change after the ownership sale?
Oh, wait, no, sorry. This was your question. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right.
I moved it there specifically because I wanted to ask it to you.
Okay.
How likely is anything to change after the ownership sale wraps up? Is there any movement on that end?
All right. So I don't know. I think that it's one of those things where there definitely are talks going on right now. I feel like pretty confident that there are active talks. Now, I think a lot of this, frankly, is going to rest on what happens with the Seahawks. I don't think that's just idle speculation. I think that there is an entirely plausible scenario where whoever wants to buy the Seahawks looks at the Sounders as a co-tenant of Lumen Field at the Reign and says, wouldn't it be convenient if all of these things were under the same ownership umbrella? And wouldn't there be all these economies of scale that we could make sense? And, you know, I think that is probably a 30 or 40% chance of happening. Not necessarily like the most likely, but I think it's a real plausible scenario. And then if I don't know if there's going to be any movement necessarily on the equity share that the Sounders are selling until there's a little bit more certainty with that. And I don't know that so I don't know. I don't have any names. I don't know anyone that is particularly interested, but I'm confident that the Sounders ownership is drawing a lot of interest. Now, where it goes, I don't know. I wish I had more information at this point, but I don't. All right. Going to close it out with Twimberly 23. With the Sounders' first league game, to my knowledge, on grass upcoming, it's not their first league game. No. But it's not even, I don't even think it's close. I think they've had several. But
they played on grass last year at home against Austin.
Oh, that's right. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, I knew that
this will be their first game on actual grass and not a.
This will be the most real grass that they've played on.
Yeah.
But anyway, the question was: are you going to be looking for anything in particular? How it plays, aesthetics?
I mean, it does play better on grass. The ball bounces less. I think it's better to watch, but I don't particularly care. My biggest thing with wanting grass is there is an element of legitimacy to it, right? There is an element of like, this is the kind of shit you have to put up with when you are the second banana in your own stadium, is playing on a surface that the players don't like playing on, that people make fun of, and that frankly is not as good for the sport. Like there is an element of that. And I do know the players prefer it for, I know there have been studies done on injury rates between the two surfaces, but very consistently from athletes who have played on both, they say, I feel worse after playing on turf. My body is beat up after playing on turf in a way that it's not after grass. And I am not going to tell them that their objective experience, that their subjective experience is wrong. Right? Like, just because they're not getting injured more, like sometimes I go to the gym and I don't get injured, but I feel a lot worse than days when I'm doing different stuff, right? Like, it's really easy for me to understand how the environment you're doing these things in can impact your body. So yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. I'm happy for them to get to play on grass. I have heard people say that this is going to lessen the Sounders' home field advantage, and I think realistically there is an advantage to playing on your own field just from familiarity with it. And when that field is a surface that people are less familiar with, that probably heightens that advantage a little bit. But overall, it's got to be like a minuscule percentage of the overall home field advantage, right? So I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference, honestly.
I'm inclined to agree with you across the board. I think I'm most just interested in the novelty of it. Like, it is still a novelty, even though, and I don't know that it's going to look any better than it did for the Club World Cup, which it looked great for. It like aesthetically it's beautiful. Like it is like really nice. And but this does seem to be like a much more extensive project than what they have done in the past. They have put down like at least a foot, if not more, of base, which is pretty significant. And it's so I don't know that. Unfortunately, the worst part of it is that I don't know what there is to really take away from it, though, because this is not what it would look like if they put in grass. This is not going to be a representative test. Like we really won't know what's gonna happen until the NFL plays on it. And
Right.
that would have been a really bold decision if they had said, look, we want to see what this plays like on the NFL. Like, we're just going to go for it. And I will note that New England Revolution, or I shouldn't say the Revolution, but the Crafts just fully ripped out the turf field and put in a fully grass field. And as far as I know, it's going to stay. I don't know that for sure, but that's the impression I got, is that that's going to stay there, at least for now.
Yeah. I mean, it's been an NFLPA priority of varying, they put varying levels of importance on it, but it's been a priority of theirs for years.
Absolutely.
Like they want grass as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't, I wish there was more of a takeaway to be had. Unfortunately, I just don't know that there is. And that's, I'm not trying to, poo-poo any of this, but I just don't know that it's, it's just not.
Enjoy it, but don't get too attached to it.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the other thing is that we know grass can work. I mean, this is going to be, I will say okay, I'll rewind. What I'll be interested in is what the grass looks like the last time the Sounders play on it in May or whatever. Because if they've been able to play on it for 2 months and it's holding up well, that tells us something, because presumably there's going to be some crappy weather that comes through, and at that point it will have hosted, a dozen or so matches, and I think we'll know a little bit more about the viability of grass. We won't really know until we see what the NFL does to it, and we're not going to see that this time.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I would imagine that if they did just fully commit to it and rip it out, like, the NFL could play on it on this surface and it could get torn up and they could say, see,
right,
it's not feasible. But it's not the same as doing a full actual install, right? So, because I would imagine a full actual install gives it durability to help withstand, NFL games. But
right,
I think that the only way the Sounders are ever getting grass in Lumen is A, it becomes part of the CBA with the NFLPA, or B, whoever buys the Seahawks wants a grass field and figures out a way to make it happen. So
right. Yep. All right. Well, I think that's the show.
Yeah.
We have no more questions. Thanks to everyone for, hopefully we got to, if you submitted a question, I hope we got to it. And if we didn't, I apologize, but I think we got to everyone. And I'll just put this out there again. If you want to participate in this, you want to get your questions answered, you got to get onto the Discord, join, become a supporter or above on Sounder at Heart, and we'll let you into the tent, as it were. Otherwise, you can enjoy it from a distance, and that's also fine. We appreciate that. I also want to give a plug for our magazine, which we still have copies of. We also have stickers if you're more inclined to get a sticker. We are going to actually start selling the next issue pretty soon. We'll probably have a package deal. Put those together if that's something you want to wait on. But if you really want to get an issue of 4, I would do that sooner than later. And all that said, thank you to our sponsor, Full Pool Wines. Thank you to all of you for subscribing. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. I am Jeremiah Shan, signing off on behalf of Aaron Campo and Lickett. This is No Sadietas, part of the Sounder Heart Podcast Network. And remember, you'll never get alone.
job. Let's go f***ing Sounders. Yeah.